All right, following Monday's sports wagering action, we're 3-0 with a push in our last 4 board member tier package bets on BrockPage.com. And the link for today's board member tier package bet is in the description section below. $1,000 bettors are up over $2,700 during that span. Now, if you want to see my current personal bet record, you can actually do that right now for free by going to BrockPage.com. My record's located right on the homepage. Now, you may be wondering what the difference is between what I do here on my YouTube channel and what I do on my website. Well, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side and total. And what I do on BrockPage.com is I actually share with you which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally. We currently have over 960 members who are signed up and active on that website. And just remember, guys, if you sign up for the board member tier package here today on BrockPage.com, you're actually going to get access to every single pick that I give out every single day, all the way through the end of March. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some NBA action. We're going to start with the Hawks taking on the Pistons. That's going to be a 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off on Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022. Atlanta's minus 6.5 with the total at 222. And despite laying multiple baskets on the road here, the Hawks are actually going to be in the second of a back-to-back here against Detroit in this one. Atlanta playing on both Tuesday and Wednesday this week. And I'll tell you what, this bigger number on the road is certainly bad news for Atlanta backers because these guys haven't covered much in the past month or so. As a matter of fact, Atlanta's gone just 1-8 against the spread in their last 9 ball games. And they covered the number only 3 times since February 16th. Now, when it comes to playing on the road this year, well, these guys have done a pretty bad job playing away from home. They're actually just 12-22 straight up in their travels. And they covered the point spread in only 29% of those road contests. Now, they're taking on a Detroit team who's done an outstanding job of covering the number recently themselves. The Pistons actually find themselves going a staggering 14-1 against the spread in their last 15 ball games. And they're actually in the top 10 in the NBA in fewest second quarter points allowed at home. So certainly some trends that you may not be aware of. But yeah, the Pistons are the hottest covering team in professional sports right now. Now, scoring-wise, Cade Cunningham's averaging over 17 points a game, along with 5 rebounds and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Saddiq Bey, he's scoring 16.5 points per contest himself, along with 5 boards and a couple assists. And out of these teams' last 10 head-to-head meetings with each other, the Pistons actually averaged 114 points a game in those very contests. Now, injury-wise, Joseph, Olynyk, Grant, Diallo, and Smith are all listed as questionable for the Pistons. When it comes to the total in this one, Detroit went 60% to the under in their last 10 ball games. Meanwhile, Atlanta saw their last 3 straight fall under the line themselves, 6-2 to the under in their last 8. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Detroit plus 6.5 and the under 222. Next ball game, it is going to be Kings versus the Pacers, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Indiana's minus 6.5 with the total at 231 and a hook. Now, the Pacers are on a 2-game winning streak, and they're actually doing a real nice job of scoring at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. These guys are averaging 114 points a game at home this year. They currently rank in the top 5 in a home offensive field goal percentage. Malcolm Brogdon scoring nearly 20 points a game, along with 5 rebounds. Meanwhile, Buddy Hield's dropping over 18 points a night himself, along with 5 boards and 5 assists. And speaking of boards, the Pacers are in the top 5 in defensive rebounding per contest at home. They're taking on a Sacramento squad who got the W in only 3 ball games since February 12th. And they actually posted a record of just 3-12 straight up during that time frame. Now, the Kings have also yet to reach double-digit road wins this year. These guys are just 9-25 straight up when traveling this season. Now, Sacramento's biggest issue this year has actually been their defensive play, or lack thereof, however you want to look at it. These guys are actually dead last in guarding the field goal on the road, and they're allowing 118 points a night in their travels. Now, injury-wise, Sabonis is out, Fox is questionable. Meanwhile, for Indy, Duarte and Jackson are questionable for them. When it comes to the number in this one, 5 out of Indy's last 9 got over the line. The Pacers are also 24-12 to the over as the official home team. Meanwhile, Sacramento, on the other side of things, they've gone 6-2 to the over in their last 8 outings themselves. I'm going to lean toward Indiana minus 6.5 in the over 231 and a hook. Next ball game, it is going to be Knicks versus the Hornets, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Charlotte's minus 2 with the total at 227.5. Now, the red-hot Hornets won their last 5 straight, and they also went 6-3 against the spread in their last 9. When it comes to offensive production in this one, Charlotte's had little problem getting on the scoreboard this year. They're actually in the top 3 in offensive points per game. They currently find themselves in the top 10 in shooting from 3 land. Miles Bridges averages 20 points a game, along with 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Meanwhile, Terry Rozier scoring over 19.5 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and 4 assists as well. And speaking of boards, Charlotte's in the top 10 in home offensive rebounding. Now, they're taking on a New York team on the other side of things who's going to be in the second of a back-to-back here in this ball game. They're playing on both Tuesday and Wednesday this week. Now, the Knicks have also had significant problems scoring with the basketball this year. Definitely not built for a track meet. The Knicks are averaging only 105 points a game. They actually find themselves in the bottom 5 in the association in shooting from the field. Now, total-wise, New York saw overs recently with the likes of Portland, Memphis, and Sacramento. Meanwhile, Charlotte, on the other side of things, saw 5 out of their last 8 get over the posted total themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Charlotte minus 2 in the over 227.5. Next contest should be a good one. I'm talking about Warriors versus the Heat, 7:30 p.m. East. Miami's minus 7.5, totals 225 and a hook. Now, Miami's won 6 out of their last 9, and they've been fairly unbeatable at the FTX Arena this season. These guys have a 743 win percentage in South Beach this year, and they're leading the entire NBA in defensive boards at home. Bam Adebayo's grabbing double-digit rebounds a game. He's also scoring 19 points a night. And speaking of scoring, Jimmy Butler's averaging 21 points a game himself, along with 6 boards and 5 assists. When it comes to shooting the basketball in this one, no one does it better from long range than Miami. The Heat's currently leading the entire NBA in offensive three-point percentage. Now, they're taking on a Golden State team on the other side of things who actually lost their last 2 straight, and they're going to head into Wednesday's game in the second of a back-to-back themselves. They're playing Orlando on Tuesday night, followed by Miami on Wednesday. And in addition to not having Steph Curry in the lineup, well, the Warriors are already finding themselves in the bottom 10 in the NBA in fourth quarter scoring. And that trend there, that's mostly when they're healthy. So Steph Curry being out certainly is not going to help that factor there. Now, injury-wise, once again, Curry's still out. Iguodala, Moody, and Wiggins will be questionable. Meanwhile, for Miami, Oladipo and Vincent are questionable for them. When it comes to the total, 5 out of Miami's last 9 fell under the line. Meanwhile, Golden State went 5-1 to the under in their last 6. I'm going to lean toward the Miami Heat minus 7.5 and the under 225 and a hook. Next matchup, it is going to be Nets versus the Grizzlies, 7:30 p.m. East. Memphis is minus 3.5, totals 231 and a hook. And even though the Grizzlies have been really good here lately, they still may have to go to work without leading scorer Ja Morant. He's actually battling some knee problems right now. And even though there's really not much to criticize when it comes to Memphis right now, they actually are not all that polished with regard to shooting the basketball. These guys actually find themselves in the bottom 10 in offensive three-point percentage, and And they're also in the bottom 3 in shooting from the stripe. Now they're taking on a Brooklyn team who, believe it or not, they play their best basketball on the road. And they're actually shooting the basketball better than any other team in the NBA when traveling. These guys simply cannot miss away from home. The Nets are currently first in the league in offensive field goal percentage on the road, and they're making nearly 40% of their three-pointers as a team away from Brooklyn. Of course, Kyrie Irving, he's drilling 43% of his three-pointers this year. He's also scoring 27 points a game. Meanwhile, KD is the team's leading scorer with nearly 30 points a game himself, along with 7 boards and 6 assists. And when it comes to covering the point spread, the Nets are currently 23-14 against the spread on the road this season, and that's good for over 62% in that particular category. Now, injury-wise, Drummond and Curry are questionable. Meanwhile, for Memphis on the other side of things, Morant and Tilly are questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, 5 out of Memphis' last 9 got over the line. They also went 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Brooklyn. So if you're into historical trends, you certainly want to think about that one there. Meanwhile, the Nets are 22-15 to the over away from home themselves. I'm going to lean toward Brooklyn plus 3.5 and the over 231 and a hook. Next ball game, another one should be a good game. I'm talking about Jazz versus the Celtics. 7:30 p.m. Eastern start time. Boston's minus 6.5 with the total at 221 and a hook. But as dominant as Boston has been, they failed to cover recently against the likes of OKC, Dallas, and Detroit. As a matter of fact, the Celtics actually have a losing record against the point spread at home this season. They're just 15-21 against the spread at the Garden, and that's good for only 41% in that particular category. And even though there's really not much to nitpick about when it comes to Boston right now, these guys have actually struggled a bit offensively at home this year. They find themselves in the bottom 10 in scoring on average per contest at home, and they're also in the bottom 10 in home offensive field goal percentage. Now they're taking on a very good Utah team who won 3 out of their last 4 themselves, and they lead the entire NBA in defensive rebounding. And of course, when it comes to guarding the 3-ball defensively, well, the Jazz are also in the top 3 in the league in defensive 3-point percentage away from home. Now, scoring-wise, Donovan Mitchell is averaging 26 points per contest, along with 4 rebounds and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Rudy Gobert is scoring 15 points a game, along with 14.5 rebounds per contest. He actually leads the NBA in rebounding per game. When it comes to shooting the basketball, the Jazz are in the top 5 in offensive field goal percentage. Now, injury-wise, Bogdanovich, House, and Azubuike are questionable for Utah. Meanwhile, for Boston on the other side, Smart and Williams are questionable for them. When it comes to the total in this one, Boston saw unders recently with the likes of Golden State, Dallas, and Charlotte. They're also 20-16 to the under at the Garden. Meanwhile, Utah went 60% to the under in all of their road games themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Utah Jazz plus 6.5. And the under 221 and a hook. Next ball game, it is going to be Suns versus the Timberwolves, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Minnesota's minus 1.5, totals 234 and a hook. Now, Minnesota lost only 2 games since February 25th, and they covered the point spread in over 83% of their contests during that time frame. Now, scoring-wise, nobody's doing it better right now than Minnesota. These guys are actually leading the entire NBA in offensive points per game. Karl Anthony Towns is scoring 24 points per contest, along with 9 boards and 3 assists. Now, the big man's also drilling 41% of his three-pointers. He's been dangerous from beyond the arc. Meanwhile, Anthony Edwards is scoring 21 points a night himself, along with 4 boards and 3 assists. When it comes to defensive play in this one, it's actually been tough to get to the basket at the Target Center this year. The T-Wolves are currently in the top 3 in the NBA in defensive field goal percentage at home. Now, they're taking on a Phoenix team who failed to cover recently against the likes of Sacramento, Toronto, and Orlando. And when it comes to rebounding the basketball, well, the Suns have actually struggled grabbing defensive boards on the road this year. They currently find themselves in the bottom 10 in the association in defensive rebounding away from home. Now, when it comes to the injury report in this one, Crowder, Payne, and Johnson are questionable for Phoenix. Meanwhile, for Minnesota on the other side, they're actually mostly healthy for the exception of McDaniels. When it comes to the total, Minnesota saw overs recently with the likes of Milwaukee, San Antonio, and Portland. Meanwhile, Phoenix went 70% to the over in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Minnesota minus 1.5 and the over 234 and a hook. Next matchup, it is going to be Magic versus the Thunder, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. OKC's -2 with the total at 217.5. Now, the Thunder lost their last 10 straight, and they've garnered only 3 wins since February 4th. Oklahoma City, they failed to reach double-digit home wins this year as well. They're not in double digits with regard to home victories, and they actually score fewer points per contest than any other team in the association. Now, they're taking on an Orlando team who covered the number in 5 out of their last 9, with outright victories over the likes of Minnesota, New Orleans, and this very OKC team during that span. When it comes to defensive play in this one, believe it or not, the Magic actually finds themselves in the top 10 in the NBA in defensive field goal percentage on the road. Now, offensively, when it comes to scoring with the basketball, Cole Anthony's averaging 17 points a game, along with 5.5 rebounds. Meanwhile, Franz Wagner scoring over 15 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and a couple assists. When it comes to shooting from the stripe, Orlando's actually in the top 10 in the NBA in offensive free throw percentage. Now, total-wise, Orlando's 6-3 to the under in their last 9 ball games. Meanwhile, OKC saw unders recently with the likes of Minnesota, Utah, and this very Orlando team. I'm going to lean toward the Magic +2 and the under 217.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Rockets versus the Mavericks, 8:30 p.m. East. Dallas is -12.5, totals 226. Now, Dallas won 7 out of their last 10 ball games. They've gone 24-12 straight up at the American Airlines Center. When it comes to defensive play in this one, the Mavs have made it impossible to score in front of their home fans. Dallas leads the NBA in fewest home points allowed. They're actually limiting their competition to just 32% shooting from 3 land in their own building. Now, scoring-wise, on the other end of the court, Luka Doncic averages over 27.5 points a game, along with 9 boards, 8 assists. Meanwhile, Jalen Brunson scoring 16 points a game himself, along with 3 boards, 5 assists as well. They're taking on a Houston team who allows more points per game on the road than any other team in basketball. And speaking of those road contests, they certainly don't win many games away from Houston. These guys are just 7-29 straight up when traveling this year, and that's good for a win percentage of just 194 in those contests. Now, injury-wise, Garuba's still out for Houston. Meanwhile, for Dallas on the other side of things, Hardaway and Pinson are still out for them. Bertans, he's also listed as questionable with a knee injury. When it comes to the number, Dallas went 6-2 to the under in their last 8. They're also 27-6 to the under at the American Airlines Center, and that's good for 75% in that category. Meanwhile, Houston saw their last 3 straight fall under the posted number themselves. I'm going to lean toward Dallas -12.5 and the under 226. Next contest, it is going to be Sixers versus the Lakers, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Philadelphia is -3.5, totals 231 and a hook. Now, the Sixers play their best basketball on the road. They're 23-11 straight up when traveling this year, and they went 62% against the number in those away games. Joel Embiid scoring over 29.5 points a night, along with 11 boards, 4 assists. Meanwhile, James Harden scoring 22 points a game himself, along with 10.5 assists as well. And when it comes to defensive play in this one, Philadelphia allows only 106 points a game on the road this year. They're taking on a Laker team who lost 6 out of their last 9 themselves. They covered the number only 3 times during that span. Now, the Lakers are also giving up just way too many points this season. They've really been lax on the defensive end of the court. They're actually in the bottom 5 in the NBA in points allowed per contest. Dead last in the league in defensive boards per game at home. When it comes to the injury report in this one, Davis and Nunn are still out. Horton Tucker's questionable. Meanwhile, when it comes to the total in this one, LA saw their last 3 straight get over the posted total, 70% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Philadelphia saw 3 out of their last 5 get over the line themselves. They also averaged 114 points a game in their last 10 meetings with Los Angeles. So once again, if you're into historical trends, plenty of overs to go around. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Philadelphia, minus 3.5. And the over 231 and a hook. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for the show. It is going to be Spurs versus the Blazers, 10 o'clock Eastern start time. San Antonio's minus 3, totals 231 and a half. Now, the Spurs won 2 out of their last 3, and they've actually got themselves a winning record against the point spread on the road this year. And speaking of those road games, the Spurs are amongst the better road scoring teams in the West. These guys actually find themselves in the top 10 in the entire NBA in road scoring. And they're led by DeJounte Murray, who's averaging 20 points a game, along with 8 rebounds, 9 assists. Meanwhile, Keldon Johnson's drilling over 40% of his shots from downtown, 16 points a night for Keldon. Now, they're taking on a Portland team who does nothing but give up points. These guys are currently dead last in guarding the 3 ball, and they're allowing nearly 115 points a game. Matter of fact, the Blazers have garnered themselves only 2 victories since February 16th. They actually went just 2-10 straight up during that time frame. Now, when it comes to the injury list, Bledsoe and Hart are questionable. Simon, Silva, and Nurkic are still out. Meanwhile, for San Antonio, Walker, Langford, K-Sock, and Bates-Diop, they are all listed as questionable for them. Now, total-wise, the Spurs saw overs recently with the likes of Oklahoma City, Minnesota, and Charlotte. They also averaged 115 points a game in their last 10 meetings with Portland. Meanwhile, the Blazers went 5-1 at the over in their last 6 themselves. I'm going to lean towards San Antonio minus 3 in the over 231 and a half. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on BrockPage.com. Now, if you guys do end up getting a membership here today on that website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on BrockPage.com, you are going to get access to that content all the way through the end of March. Although I do tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Tuesday or Wednesday to you, depending on when you're watching this. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at BrockPage.com.